Matthew, great to see you. How's life?
Life's good. I can't complain really. Like most of us during these COVID times, been a tricky time for everyone, hasn't it? But no, life's good for me, and it has been since I retired. Difficult times during the COVID because I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm fully involved in the boxing, doing lots of different things. So I enjoy my life. Life's good. So we're getting back to more like normality every day, and long may it continue.
You've jumped ahead of the gun there a little bit in the sense that I wanted to ask you about retirement. Obviously, we've seen sports stars struggle in retirement. Obviously, Ricky's been a good example of that, of people who found it tough. Why have you transitioned so well? Why didn't you struggle?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where it was the right time for me to stop boxing, and I was in no doubt about that. I had 52 professional fights. I always believed I could become a world champion. I know when you watch me in my early days, and I used to tell people that I could win a world title. I think they used to look at me and think he's a bit deluded here, Matt. People was writing me off saying I wouldn't even box for a British title. And looking at me early on in my career, I could see why people were saying that. Again, I didn't have a vast amateur pedigree, but I always had self-belief. And, I'm proud of what I went on to achieve. I was undefeated European champion. I boxed for the world title, fought some of the best fighters out there. But when I made the decision to stop, my last fight was an IBO title fight in South Africa. I've always been very honest with myself. And after that fight against a good fighter in Chris Van Heerden, I sat down straight after the fight. And, I realised then one of the things what got me to where I got to was my hunger and my determination, my will to win. And right at the back end, I think that was starting to waver. I lost my very last fight. In my opinion, not against a better fighter, against a fighter who wanted to win more than me. So that hunger's a huge part in boxing, a huge part in any sport. So the hunger just started to waver a little bit. I had a slight issue with my eye, nothing serious. I damaged the nerves in the corner of my eye. I was told that I didn't need to retire. It was just a case of a little bit of time out of the ring and then I can continue my career. But a few things come together and it was the right time to stop. And I think when you know and you're in no doubt it's the right time to stop, it does make it a little bit easier.
So you didn't get an itch?
No, I'll be dead honest. Do I miss boxing? I'm still involved in boxing, of course, but do I miss fighting? The day-to-day, the slog, the diet. People always say to me now, having my own gym, watching the guys spar, are you itching to get in there and spar? No, I'm not. I'm a firm believer in me and things have a shelf life. Even though I didn't have a lot of amateur fights, I started kickboxing at the age of 6, then got into the amateurs, I started 52 professional fights. I had my first kickboxing bout at 6 and I was boxing on and off, kickboxing. So my last fight was when I was 31. So 25 years, it's sort of like run its course. So the honest answer, mate, is the actual fighting, sparring and stuff like that. No, I don't miss it.
What about the buzz of fight night, the adrenaline?
Absolutely, mate. That is the one thing that I do miss. The week of the fight, the excitement. That is one thing that all sportsmen miss. And that is one of the things that I do miss. But I still get that. Not the same as when I was fighting, of course, but I still get that when I'm in the corner with the guys now.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. Are you more nervous before were you more nervous before your fights, or do you get more nervous for the guys that you're cornering now, knowing what they're going through?
Yeah, I suppose I get a little bit more nervous now because I do see a job as a manager and a trainer, a lot of responsibility. Your first and foremost role is to protect the boxer, and that's a big, big responsibility on anybody's shoulders. So again, like when I was boxing myself, people always used to say with the nerves and stuff like that, do the nerves get more the better the opponent you're fighting as the fights get bigger? Nerves is something that you learn to deal with both as a coach and as a fighter, and the nerves got less and less and less as the fights went on, as you know how to deal with them better.
explain to me this. Ricky's a blue, you're a red. How did that happen?
Do you know what? I've always been different, me. I'm very stubborn.
So are you a red because he's a blue?
Maybe not. I mean, the story was we were brought up in public houses, me and Ricky, for years. I didn't live in a house till I was 15. We was brought up in pubs. And one day, again, I was getting into football. One of the customers gave in, and I think he was trying to wind Ricky up, round my dad up. He gave me a little United badge. So again, I was looking at this badge, and then I was asking my dad, take me to Old Trafford. And he wouldn't at first, but I am very persistent. I kept asking him, and eventually he took me. And so, yeah, I was a United fan. I was heavily into the football at one stage. I had season tickets at Old Trafford for numerous years. Used to go to the away games. But my footballing supporters days have sort of like dwindled a little bit now. The last game I went to was several years ago now. I went to a game on a Wednesday night with my friend. I was in a Witherspoons. He had a warm can of Stella. It was a Wednesday night kickoff. I was getting busy at the time. I was sat there. I was freezing. We come out of the game. Murder's getting a taxi home. And I think I got in about 11, quarter past 9. I said to my friend, you know what? I'm not going again. And I've not been since. So I'm busy now with the boxing. I'm still a football fan. I still am a United fan, which still surprises people now. People are still shocked when I tell them I'm a United fan. But I have been since.
Because they're not winning anything now.
But,
so you've got no reason
well, that is what people say now. But it was around that time, actually, when I started. No, I've just, as I've come more busy doing other things, the football took a backseat. My partner, Jenna, actually, she's an avid football fan. She goes with my son. They've got season tickets. They always ask me for what I come. But I'm an armchair supporter now, mate. If I'm not there, I'll sit and watch it in the pub with a pint.
You mentioned, obviously, being brought up in pubs. You were also, your dad also had a carpet business, and you dabbled at carpet fitting. Were you any good?
I was quite good, actually. Ricky was a terrible carpet fitter. I'm sure he told you that and stuff like that. But I was in the carpet game with my dad for a few years, and my dad, I was there and I was still boxing as an amateur. I wanted to turn professional. With hindsight, I should have stayed amateur longer, really, and got more amateur fights behind me. But Ricky was doing well. I had access to the gym. Billy Graham used to let me come in the gym. So I was going in more and more and more. So before I actually turned professional, I was in the gym training every day for about 6 months. So my dad sort of like give me the time off and stuff like that. But yeah, I was carpet fitting for a few years, to be fair.
Was it following Ricky that took you to the gym in the first place, or did you have an interest in boxing away from that?
No, we started kickboxing originally,
Yep.
both of us, and again, you know, like any sibling, I was the younger sibling, and I think you look up to your brother, and Ricky got into the kickboxing and I followed, and inevitably with the boxing. So I think Rick's impact on my career has been massive. Like I say, often the case, a younger sibling will at least give it a try. And I give it a try. I enjoyed it. I had a talent for it myself. So, but yeah, I did sort of like follow Ricky. Yeah.
Is it right you won 18 of 22 amateur fights?
That's right. I had about 22 kickboxing fights, similar kind of record, and then I had 22 amateur fights. I won 18. I won the novice ABAs and then turned professional, which was a mistake with hindsight. I should have stayed amateur longer, but I suppose seeing how well Ricky's doing. You see the big nights, the ring entrances, and I thought, yeah, I can have a bit of this myself, but it was a mistake.
What did you want from turning pro? You said at the top that you thought you could be a world champion. Is that what you turned pro for?
Absolutely. That's the way I am. I think you've got to aim for the stars, and like I touched on before, you know, I told everyone when I turned professional I could win a world title, and especially, you know, I lost some fights early on in my career, and I was still saying it. And I could see on people's face, them thinking, he's off his head, Matt, he's deluded, he's never going to win a world. He can hope for a British, maybe fighting for the British title once. But my stubborn nature and character, I've always been that way. I've always been persistent, and I've never lacked self-belief in myself. I always believed that I could become a world champion, and it never panned out that well. But I didn't fall far short.
When you started off as a pro, were you working? Did you have a day job?
Yeah, I was working with my dad at the time, and again after a couple of fights, I stopped the carpet fitting then, and I was able to concentrate full time on being a professional boxer, which in the boxing game this day is quite rare, really. So I was lucky.
You're quite a level-headed chap, and always have been, or as long as I've known you. Were you a well-behaved kid?
Yeah. Again, I suppose me and Ricky's story isn't a stereotypical boxing story. My mum and dad was never rolling in money, but they've always done well. They've always had money. We never wanted for anything as a kid. There was no real boxing background. It was always a football family. My dad was a good footballer. But me and Ricky was always encouraged to pursue sports. That's something that was pushed into us from an early age. It was mainly football that we was pushed towards. But again, the boxing come to Ricky, and I followed. But my mum and dad was always very supportive. Wherever we wanted to go, I know now as a parent myself, both me and my partner, I always just run it. We're all over the show, same of a weekend, and there is a lot of parents now that don't do that for whatever reason. Some can't do it, of course. But we was always pushed into sport, and I'm very thankful to my mum and dad for that. I really am.
You made your pro debut at York Hall on a bill when Ricky fought Lowry. He was 20-0 at the time. Did you get a lot of media coverage, or were you under the radar a little bit?
No, I did get quite a lot of media coverage, being Ricky's brother. And also, they liked the City, you know. I was big on my football at the time, and they liked the City United story as well. So, no, again, very, very fortunate. Right from the start, I got put on some big bills and in the spotlight, and I wasn't quite ready for that. I didn't have the boxing background. I didn't have the boxing education behind me. So I was thrust in the spotlight. With that came the pressure, and that is why I struggled early on in my career.
Where did the Magic nickname come from?
I'm not too sure, honestly. I can't really remember
I was waiting
that.
for a brilliant story. Yeah. I was like, I'm not sure I'd heard this one.
Mate, I wish I had one. I honestly can't remember, Tris. I really can't remember where that come from.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. It's a bit of a letdown, that one. I'm sorry about that one.
Oh, mate, anticlimactic. The first two fights were against David White. Boxing News said you took everything he dished out in the first fight, and in the second, Boxing News said you showed a good improvement. You also said in a very early interview that you were doing a lot of your improving behind closed doors. Talk to me about that, and I suppose that's something that we will see with Campbell now at the start of his career, because you were under the microscope because of Ricky, and now Campbell's under the microscope because of both of you guys. So a lot of your improvements were done behind closed doors, as we're hoping to see from Campbell.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, I was fortunate. I was in a good stable. Billy Graham, very knowledgeable in the sport, taught me a lot early on. I'm mixing around good fighters, just discussions in the gym and sparring with these guys. And, you know, it was one of them things. It's a double-edged sword. I suppose part of the fighter I was always very tough, and I think Billy could spot that in me. I was always sparring with guys that always had the edge, either in weight or there was a lot more experience for me.
Who are we looking at here?
We're looking at the likes of, obviously, my brother used to do a lot of sparring with Ricky. There was guys like Matthew Macklin, Paul Smith, Farnell, Gomez, Steve Bell. We had a really, really good gym, and you know, Billy could see I was a tough lad. Whenever there was a sparring shot, it'd inevitably be me. And even though I did think that hindered me a little bit, it certainly built me into the fighter that I become. You know, I think the perfect, what any fighter needs, especially in sparring, which is the most important thing, you need a fine balance of the two. You need your spars where you're confident, you can let your hands go, you can try stuff. And then you need your other spars where it's tough, battle hardened, and you're up against it. That's the majority of the work I was getting. But it did stand me in good stead.
Your first loss came to David Kirk by just a point in Manchester. Claude Abrams, covering it for Boxing News, said the result left him and others stunned, and he said that you were a clear winner. I guess you would agree with that.
100%. I mean, it was a difficult night, that. I remember it well. I remember all my fights really, really well. I remember that fight. I was so disappointed. Again, it was on the undercard of one of Ricky's fights. I was actually the floater that night, so I was there very early. I was wrapped up, hands were bandaged. There was a lot going on. My fight kept getting put back. And I think it was a really late fight in the end. From being at the arena early on, it was a very, very poor performance for myself. But without a doubt, I won the fight.
Yeah, what happened in Ricky's fight that night, do you remember?
I think he fought.
The Smith one, wasn't it?
I'm not too sure. I had in my head it was the Eamon McGee night, but I might be wrong. Okay.
2 fights later, you suffered your second loss. That was to another David Kerr. You were stopped in 4 in Wembley. That was on a cut. Boxing News said it was a headbutt, but not malicious. Agree?
No, I don't agree. I don't see how you can. If it wasn't malicious, it was a clash of heads. It was definitely a headbutt.
Yeah.
Again, it was a fight I was winning, and it's one. I look back on my record, and one of the things I'm very proud of, I was never stopped. But that's sort of like when I go on box or anyone go, what about when he stopped you, didn't he? I said, no, he didn't stop me. I said it was a clash of heads. The referee dived in and stopped the contest. But again, it was a fight I was winning, and again, very, very disappointed. And then I sort of like was thinking, everything's really going to pan out for me. Yeah, you had a couple of days where I was down, but again, I just had that determination. And when people was writing me off saying I wasn't going to do this, I wasn't going to do that, it was great fuel for me. It was great motivation to me. And those voices all the time, they were, sounds like a corny thing to say, but it's true. It was pushing me. It was pushing me to go on and on.
People would have said that, you know, as Ricky's brother, you would have got favouritism, but you've lost a fight on a close decision, and then you've lost with a cut that's probably nothing like as bad as some of the cuts Ricky had. So there was no sort of favouritism in that respect, was there?
Without a doubt, it wasn't a bad cut, mate. You could have probably put it together with prick stick. I think it had 2 or 3 stitches in it. Mick Williamson was in my corner. He was fuming with the referee. He was absolutely fuming.
Think of the stuff that he'd seen before.
Absolutely, and you know, again, I'd been in and around boxing. I'd seen other cuts. I'd seen a lot of cuts that Ricky had suffered, and the ref died. He was a very inexperienced ref. He dived in and stopped the fight, and you know, it doesn't matter how much people are going on and complaining. It certainly doesn't make you feel any better. It certainly makes you feel a lot worse, and that was certainly the case. And yeah, it was a testing time, it really was.
You fought Jay Mahoney twice next. You beat him on points over 6, but then stopped him in 1 2 months later. Why the marked improvement? Was this going back to what you were saying about improving behind closed doors?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, mixing with great fighters in the gym, advice, going around different camps, and that's how you learn, just hearing different people speak about different situations and stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of my learning was going on behind closed doors, as you touched on before.
Do you remember a sparring session that you had a right ding-dong with that was either two-way or where you took a real shoe-in from someone?
It happened, mate. I'll be dead honest. It happened time and time again. I was on the wrong end from my brother quite a few times. We was always falling out in our house, especially when we lived at home. I'd come home when it was black and blue, and you remember, what have you been doing again? So,
did he get told off for that?
Oh yeah, he got told off.
So he took liberties with you, did he?
Well, I tell you what, one time I had a new head guard on, and again, being around the same kind of weight, we'd do a lot of sparring together, and Billy could see that was a tough one, and he put me in with all the lads. Sort of like used me as a sparring bit, you know. I was a little bit resentful about that for some time, but that soon went because it stood me in good stead. I was used as a sparring partner. But again, back to the point, I had a new head guard, and any fight will tell you, once you get a new head guard, they do move around a little bit. Anyway, I'm getting caught, and it's moving and moving and moving. So anyway, he caught me. I put my hand up, and he whacked me in the back, right behind the back, and to say I lost my temper, mate, was an understatement. I ripped my gloves off. I chased him across the side of the ring. And my back, Trish, was never the same throughout my career since that day. He'd done some damage to one of the ribs right round the back. So it would flare up. every now and again. Never affected me in a fight, but sometimes when I was sparring and get caught around the back, I'd have to put a pad in. They very easily damage ribs. So he probably doesn't know about that, but yeah.
You drew with Francis Jones over 6 on a bill, topped by Ricky against Ben Tackie. That run of WBU title fights at the MAM was incredible as Ricky's brand really built. What was it like through that period, watching him develop and grow into the attraction that he would ultimately become?
It was fantastic. You know, me and Rick's always been so close. You know, we have had times where we've had little falls out and stuff like that. But again, as brothers, we were so close. We was like friends. We was training together every day. We'd go out, socialise together. We, you know, well known. We'd go out, have a drink together. And I've always been very proud of Ricky. And they were great times. He was filling the MEN, you know, the momentum was building. We could see the career he was going. And Ricky's always been a special fighter. You know, with myself, you know, I think the only person who believed I could possibly get there was myself. Where was Ricky? We all sort of knew from very early days as an amateur he was knocking people out left, right and centre. He always had that tremendous natural ability. So he always worked hard as well, so we could see it was the way. And to be part of it and to fight on the undercards certainly helped my boxing education, so it was a winner all round.
That draw with Francis Jones, by the way, Boxing News said it was fight of the night and it was wasted because it was on before anyone arrived in the arena.
I've been there a few times, mate, and again, it's always stood me in good stead, you know.
Character building.
Character building, mate, yeah. You know, sometimes first on, other times last on, when literally they're putting the seats away and stuff like that, and you're in there toiling away. But again, it is character building. If you stick with it, you'll get there in the end.
People want to know if there was any subconscious resentment towards Ricky, where you're thinking, you know, all these doors are opening for him. He's making this progress. I'm getting stopped on a cut like I had, or I've not got the decision in a fight I should have won. Are you thinking, why is it happening for him and not for you?
I was wondering and I was getting down because things just wasn't happening for me. But I can honestly say, and anyone that, I mean, you ask Ricky yourself or any of the family or anything, there's never been any resentment towards Ricky. I've always been really proud of what he's achieved. I've always been the first there behind him and stuff like that. So no, there was never any resentment, but did it push me on more to say, I want some of this, I can do it as well? When people were saying, oh, he's never going to be as good as his brother and stuff like that, does it push you on? Of course it does. If words like that don't push you on, you're certainly not doing the right thing.
You won the Central Area title against Rob Burton over 10. Were you happy doing the 10 that night? Fitness-wise, you've never come up short of you.
No, and that was a great experience. And sometimes you have to have experienced the things to know yourself. And that's what I always put into guys now, having their first 10 rounds as a coach. It's all in, you never put into a fight unless you can do the 10 rounds. And I remember after the 4th round, it was on Sky, it was a big night, it was under a promotion, but it was called Fight School back in the day. Right. So it was on the TV, it was on Sky, I flew out trying to impress, tried to get rid of him, nearly did. It never panned out. And then after 4 rounds, I thought, I'm blowing a little bit, I'm going to have to take my foot off the gas for a few of the middle rounds. Things got a little bit difficult. And then I realised that I had plenty left in the tank. I got that second win and I pushed on. After the 10 rounds, I knew I could have done more. And that's learning and knowledge that you can only get, I believe, from being in there yourself.
You fought quite a few of the same guys, at least twice, if not multiple times. So guys like Carl Taylor, David White, who we said about, Francis Jones, Rob Burton, who we just talked about there. Was that good for your education, so you could see your improvement? Because generally, 9 times out of 10, you did improve your results against them. Did it show that you were going in the right direction? Or was it frustrating where you think, hang on, I've already beaten this guy? Yeah,
I think they was careful who they matched with, and rightly so, because I was still learning on the job. I never liked to go over old ground, but I never used to like to do it as a fighter then, and I certainly don't like doing it as a coach. Now, my old matchmaker was a guy called Ernie Fossey. An old school guy, anyone will tell you what a character he was. Some days I'd be fighting on the Saturday, Tuesday, I'd not heard who was fighting, I'd not heard anything from Ernie. I used to, Ernie, who am I fighting on Saturday? Don't worry about it, I'll sort it out. But yeah, it's getting a little bit late now. Look, I'm sorting the opponent out. Don't worry, I've got him sorted now. As soon as I've got it tied on, I'll send you his name. And all you need to worry about is if he was any good, he won't be fighting you. And he put the phone down. And that would literally be as a conversation when it sounds ridiculous, but that's the way it was and that's the way he was. A great guy. But he certainly knew what he was doing. They had to be slow with me. And with hindsight, I know that now.
How did it work with Billy and you and Ricky and everyone? Did you all go in and train together at the same time, or were you rotated in so that, say, Ricky was 10 to 11, you were 11 till 12, Macklin 12 to 1, or was it everyone in? Just, you know, how were those sessions structured?
Yeah, no, we used to all train together, and to be brutally honest, you know, Ricky was the best fighter in the gym, and he was getting a lot of Billy's attention. Bobby Rimmer was getting involved as well at the time, and he was keeping other fighters happy. And we had a great stable. When I look back, we used to have such a laugh in that gym. We really did. There were some real characters in that gym. Mate, we'd go to training, we'd start training at 12, we'd still be at the gym, gone 3 o'clock sometimes. Kerry was involved as well, another great guy. We'd finish training and we would literally be sat there having cups of tea, mate, for an hour, and just chatting after. There were great times, you know, often after the fights at the MEN, where invariably a lot of the fights were, we'd all go away, we'd all go to Tenerife together, have a little holiday, have a little trip, few days, and they were great times, they really were.
You mentioned Kerry there. How much of a role did he have to play with you? Because obviously he got a lot of certainly national coverage with the work he did with Ricky. You didn't balloon up quite as much as Ricky did. How closely were you working with Kerry?
Kerry's a great guy. Kerry's, you know, I've been involved in professional boxing a lot of years, and Kerry's one of the best people I've met in boxing. So knowledgeable, such a great guy, and I still work with Kerry now. He's doing the cuts for Campbell, and I'd like him to get on board with the other fighters too. A real great guy, so knowledgeable on the sport, knows how to put it across, and you know, like I say, Kerry is one of the best people. I mean, I look back, he didn't quite have the same job to do that he had with Rick, but again, I was watching how Ricky was going on after his fights, and I used to think, and I look back these days and I think, what was I doing? I used to watch how he used to go on after his fights, and he'd be going out and he'd be doing this, doing that. Out most nights.
Doing what?
Mate, going to the pub. Again, it sounds bad, but we was both so active early on in our career. I think we both had 9 fights, or he might have had a little bit. I had 9 fights in my first year as a professional. Richard was very active, and I used to watch how he used to do things, how he used to go on, and it was literally going to the pub most nights in between training camps, putting on this weight, and I used to watch him and think, well, that must be the right way to do it.
I think a generation of boxers thought that.
Well,
you know, I think
certainly at our gym, mate. There were some fun times at our gym during them times. But I do look back now and wish I hadn't have done that. But I had some good fun. That's what I will say.
Tell me about the night Ricky fought Kostya from your perspective.
Oh, that's a night that will stay with me, because I remember I boxed the night before. There was 2 shows at the MEN.
Yeah, because Brody was on that fight, wasn't he?
I boxed on the undercard of that fight. I fought a Frenchman who was quite good actually, called Adnan Hadjoui, and that was on the Friday, and Ricky fought Kostya on Saturday night. And again, I got into boxing. Yeah, but I've always been a boxing fan, and I still am to this day. I've been to boxing fights all over the world. I've seen you in Vegas a few times, Tris, at several fights. I'm a boxing fan, I still am. I still like getting over to Vegas, different locations, but there was just something special that night. 2 o'clock in the morning, the place was absolutely rammed. The atmosphere was an electric, and what a performance against a great fighter. That again, that's a great, you know, of my own career obviously comes first, but that is one of my best nights in boxing.
How can you describe your emotions that night, from the nerves beforehand to the excitement of it starting to the roller coaster of the fight to what happened at the end?
Oh, it was amazing, because we was like the Waltons at the time, mate. We all still lived at home together. Ricky's bedroom was probably the size of the toilet. He was in a tiny little bedroom. He still lived at home with my mum and dad, and we was all together in the build-up for that fight. It was emotional. I remember we were sat there watching it, and I think Sky was doing a little build-up to the fight. And they played the song Elvis, If We Could Dream, and we were all sat there and we was all filling up watching it. We really was, but I always believed Rick could do it. There's just something special. Sometimes it's special night, special build-up, but we was all very confident, even though a lot of people wrote Ricky off going into that one. In the family, we was all pretty confident about what we could do, and I think that's something that's been ingrained to us as kids, starting sport early. We are pretty, in the same now with Campbell, we are pretty confident in what we can do and our abilities.
You guys left Frank Warren to go with Dennis Hobson at the time. Did you think about staying, or was the situation between Ricky and Frank too far gone for you to think about staying?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brutally honest. A lot of my big nights in my career come pretty much towards the back end of Ricky's career. But again, I like to think I know what I'm doing, and I've always been pretty smart and level-headed, like you touched on before. It was no doubt the right thing for me to do for my boxing, to get on these big fights, big nights, and was just stick with Ricky, really, and that's the reality of it.
And that happened. So you fought on the night, Ricky fought in Collazo, and you beat Jose Medina. That was during a period of soaking weather in Boston, wasn't it, with the floods and all the rest of it, where it was a nightmare out there. And then you fought Alan Bosworth in a British title eliminator and lost on a DQ. Boxing News said you twice punched him low and then were DQ'd for hitting him on the break by Howard Foster. I've seen the clips. You then go and say something to Howard Foster afterwards. I guess it's not pleasant.
It wasn't a pleasant night. Again, I look back and smile and learn. But it wasn't a pleasant night. It really wasn't. It was a British title eliminator. You just learn as you go along. All these experiences over the years, it was one of those fights. It was a rough, tough, it was a dirty fight, to be honest. I had points taken off. I was clearly ahead in the fight. I was absolutely dominating the fight. And I think it was just the atmosphere and everything that night.
Should you have been disqualified?
No, I don't think so. I do think it was a little bit harsh, and I was very, very angry about it at the time.
What did you say to Howard?
I honestly can't remember. It wouldn't have been very complimentary. I mean, after the fight, I think my mum tried to swipe Howard with a bag. Jenna, which is not like Jenna, she threw something into the ring. The place erupted that night. I remember Dennis Hobson asking me to actually get on the mic to try and calm the supporters down, because I think people did feel it was the wrong decision. They was quite angry about it. There was stuff going into the ring left, right and centre. But I was fuming, mate. And again, I look back with slight embarrassment now. I was so angry at the time, mate, that Dennis Hobson asked me to get the mic and said, "Can you calm your supporters down?" And I don't know whether... Can you swear?
Yeah.
I said, "I hope they fucking wrecked the place, Dennis," and fucking stormed out of the ring. To say I was angry, mate, was an understatement, and that lasted for some time.
So, just to recap here, Boxing News said you threw away certain victory and that you were a mile ahead. But there wasn't a lot of sympathy for you from Andy Whittle, who wrote that many in the hall felt Hatton could have been thrown out sooner. You said afterwards, "I lost all respect for Bosworth." And you basically were alluding to what you thought, saying he was making the most of fouls, such as they were.
Yeah, I still stand by that. For a tough guy, I do think he played up to it. I do think the Ingles certainly worked Howard that night. And again, that's just my opinion. I remember I had to go see the board after that. I was sat down, I was surrounded, I think it was Alma Ingle, John Ingle, Brendan Ingle, so I thought, I'm not going to get much joy here. But again, I've worked with Howard several times, and that's something I just put in the past to experience, I really do. But it wasn't a great night. Again, a night I look back with slight embarrassment, but like in life, all you can do is learn from it and move on.
You got to fight your corner as well. John Ingle told Boxing News, actually, he said you'd become used to refereeing your own fights.
Yeah, right. And I remember...
It was fueling the fire.
It was one of them. And I remember even... I've never been scared to tell people what I think, and I don't fall out with people, but sometimes I have to. And I remember falling out with Ricky and Billy for some time at the time because he was ready for going, in my opinion. I'm sure their views are different. He was ready for going in that last, but was miles ahead. And I said to Rick and Billy, I said, why don't you just calm me down? They said, but he was there to be taken out. He was there to be finished off. So that's, again, that's their opinion, and that is my opinion. Sure. Who's to say whose is right? If it had knocked him out, they certainly take the judges out of the equation. But I was of the opinion they should have calmed me down.
That's interesting. Good insight. I like that. You beat Frank Hotelling in Vegas, which was a big fight, wasn't it? Big fight, big result. It
was a big fight, and boxing is it's just been, I look back now and I'm smiling now just talking about that fight. So, again, bizarre fight. I boxed really well that night. He was a decent fighter. Again, you only get these experiences boxing. I always used to like to go and see my opponents after the fight, get a picture, get them to sign a glove. Some of them I've got. I remember going in to see Frank after the fight. I walked in, and next minute the police burst in and put him in handcuffs and escorted him out. Literally as I'm there to get a picture with him. So I was like, what's going on here? What's all that about? They said, oh, he's been up for some pretty serious charges, Frank. So I went, right. I said, well, why has he been allowed to fight? They said, oh, no, it's a little bit different out here. We let him fight. We'll go now. We'll take his purse because again, an experience you'll only get in boxing.
What had he done?
I think it was like fraud. I think he was setting up like crashes and stuff like that, but he'd been doing it for several years with his family.
There was a story Kelly Pavlik said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago where he was he fought someone in Atlantic City and the police were out there waiting for his opponent to finish as well, and then they nabbed him on child support.
Yeah, same sort of thing, mate. It seemed bizarre, doesn't it? But only in America.
You included, big wins over Edwin Vasquez, who was 22, 9 and 2, and then Frankie Santos, both on big shows in Vegas. What was your experience of Vegas like, and your observations? And basically, if I throw these names at you, Tom Jones, David Beckham, Wayne Rooney, Oasis, all the actors. I mean, tell me a couple of stories, or tell me devote a bit of time to tell me about you in Las Vegas. Again,
looking back, great times, best times of my life. From the training camps out there, we used to go out probably 4 weeks before, and again we'd go to different gyms, working with different trainers, different people, and it was just so, again for me, boxing education, not just the fights, being around the gyms, working with different people, taking little pearls of wisdom off different trainers. We worked with, Floyd Mayweather Sr., Brother Nazim, and you was just mixing with these people on a daily basis, watching other people sparring with different fighters, different styles, then fighting these good, not top level fighters, but good fighters. And for me, boxing education, both in the preparation and the nights, second to none, really was. And then, obviously after the fights, me and Ricky's always liked to drink. Whether that comes from being brought up in pubs, I don't know. So some of again, we'd always be fortunate enough to have a few days out there after the fights. We can tell you some stories. We won't be able to tell you some. We had some great times.
Go on, tell me a gossipy Red Top Sun newspaper story. Go on.
But again, you touched on the names. Again, very fortunate to meet some of the people like David Beckham and Tom Jones, Tom Cruise, meeting these people. It was amazing times. I think Ricky put in his book, the one with Tom Cruise, where he had his feet up, and I think I might have asked him to move them pretty politely, or maybe not quite politely. And I didn't really, but again, looking back, great times. Probably the times of my life out there, and I'm very fortunate.
Were there any of those A-listers that took you by surprise with how friendly they were?
David Beckham was a great guy, and
you would say that because he's a Red. What about someone that you've got no allegiance to?
Tom Jones, another one. I've been around boxing and I've met some people along the years, and you know for a fact some people are great in front of the camera. They know the right thing to say and do, but then you sort of like observe them from afar, and you think it's a bit of a facade.
The camera's not on, and
But some people, I think you know straight away that they're just really good people. And the good thing about boxing, which other sportsmen maybe or maybe don't get, they seem to have a lot of respect for the boxers. They know it's a hard sport. They know it's a tough sport. A lot of them are very, very interested in the sport. And again, I think same sort of thing with people in general. They do realise boxing's a hard sport, and you do tend to get a fair bit of respect for them.
Did you ever have it where someone showed in like directly to you, so someone was obviously all over Ricky because he was where he was, and then they basically snubbed you? Have you ever had that?
I've had that loads of times.
Have you actually?
It still goes on to this day.
Is there an example you can give?
Mate, again, if I had £1 for every time someone's tried to be smart with me, I'd be a rich man. I mean, it wasn't long ago. Someone said I was just in the pub, just in a local pub. Some smart ass come up to me and said, "Yeah, you wasn't as good as Ricky, was you?" And I said, no, but I was certainly better than you. Now fucking do one.
That's a fair comment. At what point did you leave Billy for Bob? And was it Bob that you went to?
It was Lee Beard, actually.
That's right. Because Lee went to Vegas with you a couple of times as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and again, me and Ricky was always very close, and Lee Beard was getting involved at the time. And again, one by one, the fighters were leaving Billy's gym because a lot of the work was going into Ricky. I think Bobby Rimmer left around that time. One by one, the fighters were gradually leaving. But it sounds a soft thing to say. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave Richard there on his own, because I knew, you know, even though you don't need a lot of fighters in the gym, you do need people there working around you.
Well, in many ways, that competitive environment made all of you.
Absolutely. I mean, when a gym gets that big, you need help. Bobby was the help, but for whatever reason, it didn't pan out. One by one, the fighters would leave, and I was the very last fighter to leave. I didn't want to leave, but I knew it was I lost to Craig Watson at Manchester City, and that was the final straw. I wasn't getting enough attention. I wasn't getting enough work. And
fought at City, which was the last thing you wanted to do.
Absolutely, and I put in a pretty dismal performance, to be fair, and lost to Craig Watson, who won the fight clearly on night. And sometimes it takes something like that to happen, and I thought, you know what, I need to leave. I need to look after myself, and I know I can do it. I know I've got the ability. I need to do what's right for me. And at that moment, I left Billy Graham's. I went with Lee Beard, who put a lot of time and effort into
so Ricky
me.
Left at the same time, because that was after the Lascano
Pretty
fight.
much, because he couldn't train there on his own.
Sure.
And again, we've always been very close. And again, even though I'm very grateful to Billy Graham, I was toiling away with mixed success around that. The day I left that gym and went with a trainer who believed in me and who put the work, that is the day my career took off.
So was Mayweather Senior not an option for you, or did you know, because obviously Ricky went that way, was that not something that you considered?
No, not really. I'd started working with Lee, and I got on well with Lee. We got a good connection. He believed in me. He was putting the time and effort into me. What he was telling me was making a lot of sense. And I went with Lee, and I was training with Lee for some time, and I had some really good wins and some good success under Lee. The
Craig Watson fight, I think that was your first legit loss. I think certainly I think I've seen interviews with you saying that beforehand, because obviously we talked about the other losses on points, controversial, and head clashes, disqualification, and so forth. There was a lot of people, I remember at the time, saying, well, that's your level. You found your level now, that's your ceiling. Did that, I suppose, obviously, going back to what you said earlier, that was pure motivation for you?
Pure fuel, pure motivation.
But Craig, give him his due, Craig was a very handy fighter as well.
Craig was a very, very good fighter. And that was a great night for him, and fair play to him. He beat me fair and square. He beat me clearly. There was certainly no ifs, no buts, no doubts. I couldn't make any excuses at the time. It was purely down to my preparation. I just wasn't getting it, and that's why I moved.
I like this. You beat Ben Tackie, and then you beat Ted Bammy. It was a good run of fights. You were in Vegas for one and Altrincham the next. This is a common theme for you. Really amazing bills and show one fight, and the next thing you're topping the bill in a small hall or a leisure centre. What's going through your mind when you're in a small hall changing room, having been in Vegas and having been at that top end at the MGM Grand and stuff? When you're then, is it a humbling experience to be back in a smaller place and thinking, well, geez, I was just there a few months ago and now I'm here and I can't even, I can touch all four walls in the same changing room?
It is. You obviously can't beat the big nights, but again, a ring's a ring. I remember it happened again in my career. I boxed Kell Brook at the Sheffield Arena. I know I fast forward it just because it's a similar kind of thing. I lost to Kell Brook, and then I was still getting offered fights, but I wanted the right fight to set me back up. Dave Colwell offered me a fight at Bowlers against Michael Lomax, who won the prize fighter. And I've never been the sort of... It would have been easy for me to say, I've just got X amount for fighting Kell Brook at Sheffield Arena, and then I'm coming back to Bowlers and fighting Michael Lomax for peanuts. No, I'm not doing that. But again, I've always known what I'm doing. I've always like to think I've been pretty smart. I thought, no, let's have one back at home, forget the money, get a good win under my belt, and that will set me up for another big fight, another big payday. And that's how it got towards the back end of my career. I wanted to fight the best people for the biggest amount of money.
You beat Ernesto Zepeda in Vegas when Ricky fought Pacquiao. Let me ask you about his camp. How bad were things going in? Were you aware of the stuff? And how did you feel when Ricky was iced by Pacquiao? It had to be a very harrowing experience.
It was.
The whole thing, as Ricky's laid out in the book and a few times subsequently, the whole camp, and obviously the fight was a disaster. Were you aware of all of that?
I was aware of that, yeah. I was over there training. My dad was involved at the time. I spoke to my dad. I said, he's fucked. He's knackered.
That was when he was getting beaten up by Lara and Erizlandi Lara.
Yeah, different people, and it's hard to watch. But, Rick's his own man. Floyd Mayweather Sr. has his own way of doing things. I was training hard. I was always an avid trainer. Lee Beard was working with Floyd Sr. We was running up Mount Charleston, which is tough enough as it is. I was always super fit, but up there in the heat, and he had Ricky wearing hobnail boots. They asked me to wear them. I said, no, I'm not wearing them. I didn't wear them. And he was just deteriorating day by day.
What boots are those? Hobnail boots?
You'd like
what
big...
are they, like military boots?
Running up Mount Charleston in them. And to me, it was crazy. And there was no way I was doing it. But Ricky did it. And he was just deteriorating. And he was sparring with good fighters and some not so good fighters. And I could say it was only going to go one way. I'm pretty sure that it was put to Ricky to put the fight back. He decided he wanted to go with the, and I'm a firm believer me, preparation's the key to success, and his preparation, he was far too much.
How do you stay focused on your own fight when you've got that concern for him and what's going on over there?
It's one of those sport boxing where it does focus you because you can't afford distractions. By that stage, I'd had a lot of fights, a lot of experience, and knew I had to concentrate. And again, it's sort of like where I've always been very close to Ricky, and I've always put my opinions across, maybe try this, maybe do this. I still don't believe, and again, have we discussed it, I don't believe Floyd Mayweather Sr. was the right trainer for Ricky, and that's nothing against to him. I think he should have tried a few different gyms, a few different trainers, and sort of like gone with a fit, but they went with Floyd Mayweather Sr. I don't think that was the right fit for him, and that's nothing against Floyd Sr., who's a fantastic trainer, who's gone on to do some great things, but all you can do is, once you get to a certain age, you make your own decisions, you make your own mind up.
Where were you when Ricky was knocked out by Pacquiao? Were you right there?
I was in the crowd, yeah. I was ringside at the crowd, and...
was that your worst experience ringside?
Yeah, it was. You know, it wasn't an experience. Again, the Senchenko one again, I know it's when Ricky's done on some such great things. The Senchenko fight was another very, very sad moment, really, because Richard would have murdered him in his day. And again, it was, even though on the whole Rick sees it as a positive, it was very sad. But yeah, the Pacquiao, it was a brutal knockout, wasn't it? For even when you're ringside for somebody you don't really know, you feel bad as a fighter, and it's not a nice experience, as you'll know yourself, Tris. But when it's your family, it's heartbreaking.
Were you panicked?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. It did come round quite quickly, but no, your heart goes into your mouth for them split seconds. It really does.
Did you see him? Did you envisage him having the problems that he had afterwards? That, you know, because he sort of did come off the rails after that.
I didn't envisage it at the time, but I certainly understand it now. Even though Ricky's had some great nights, it must be hard to shake nights like that off. It really must. So I didn't envisage it then, but I can certainly see that now.
There was talk in Boxing News of you fighting Zab Judah. Was that close? That
was a done deal twice. And it was just, the fight obviously wasn't meant to be. I'm trying to think, I think it might have been Mayweather-Marquez where the fight fell through and got cancelled in the end. Okay. But I'd signed the contract to fight Zab twice, yeah.
In one of the instances, you wound up fighting Lovemore and Do. That was in Stoke. There's no way Zab Judah was going to Stoke, though, was there?
No.
Going back to Lovemore, who was a very good fighter, it was close. Boxing News said it was not a decision to get worked up about, but that was no consolation because you lost a narrow one on points, right?
Yeah, maybe I should have read that because, again, I certainly got wound up about that one too.
Well, you can tell there. So you said you thought that you won the fight by 3 or 4 rounds. And then Lovemore suggested a rematch over in South Africa. And you said, well, if I'm not getting a decision over here, I'm not going to get one over there.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I don't look back on any of my fights regrets. I do think I won that fight. I think Sky had me winning the fights by about 3 rounds. I pushed the fight. I landed the more shots. I certainly pushed the fight throughout. Again, it shouldn't matter. I was fighting at home. I was fighting on my brother's promotion. You've touched on it before. Sometimes when you think you're going to get advantages, it can turn officials the other way. And we've seen that in the amateurs with Campbell. I'm sure we'll talk about him in a bit, but I've seen some decisions in Campbell where I've trying to be as impartial and I've thought he's won that fight and they've gone the other way. But this is that's human nature, isn't it? Shouldn't be like that, but often is.
Was Judah the one that got away for you? Was that the biggest fight that you were linked with that didn't come off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you really want that?
I
did. Vegas and all that.
I did. You know, I always wanted to fight on the big stage, and I'll be brutally honest. I was never scared of anyone. I would have fought anybody for the right price. By the back end of my career, I wanted to fight the best people for the best money, and I always enjoyed the big nights. I always believed in myself. And yeah, I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to test myself against the best people. So of all the people that I was linked to fighting, that was probably one that got away, and I would have liked that one, yeah.
You mentioned there about backing yourself. With just 2 weeks' notice, you outscored Gianluca Branco for the European. You backed yourself. He was a guy who was a very, very useful operator. He'd only lost to, I think, 2 fights going into that. Do you know who against?
I certainly do. Cotto and Gatti, and
to not bad, is it? Yeah, not bad.
To put myself on that list, and that was a night where, again, Branco was a quality fighter. He had an excellent record. Yeah, let's be honest. You know, I'm always honest. He was aging, but even after I beat him and defended the European title twice, I think 12 months later he was European champion all over again. So he certainly wasn't at the end of the career. I've always had people trying to knock me. Why, I don't really know. Again, now I've retired from boxing, I find people a lot more complimentary now I've retired than when I was actually fighting. I always found people used to try and knock me accomplishments, they used to knock me but
people hated you on the forums. Do you remember the forums?
I didn't really used to go on a lot, but mate, I remember some of the abuse I used to get online, yeah. It was...
unnecessary,
unnecessary, yeah. But I remember the Branco night, and I was always by that end, I was coming later in my career. I'd realised how Ricky did it wasn't the way for me to do it, and I'd got better then. I was living my life better. I was always training. It was a 12-rounder on 2 weeks' notice. I wasn't as fit as I usually was, but again, I believed I could do it. I believed I could win. I got off to a great start, which helped me. I think when you get off to a great start in any fight, confidence builds, and when you're in a nice rhythm and you feel you're winning, you can box and box all night, and that was certainly the case. And it was, of all my fights, people generally want to talk about the Canelo and different Kell Brook, people like that. That was without a doubt a sweet, sweet moment. All those years of people writing me off saying I couldn't do this, when they raised my hand, apart from my kids being born, it was the best night of my life. It just felt so good, it really did.
Yeah, because with that belt came real validation, and people had to accept that you were beyond domestic level, that you were at least European fringe world class, and that proved everything, that you were better than everyone sort of given you credit before.
Absolutely, and that was the best spell of my career. My first defence, I fought a guy called Yuri Nusnenko, who I think held the interim or the WBA title. He was a good fighter. First round, broke my jaw. I got up to win the fight over 12 rounds. And again, around that time, and I defended it again, around the time when the Alvarez fight came up, I was on great form. I was full of confidence. I was at my peak that time, and the guys that held the WBA title, I think Senchenko, who later fought my brother, there was Malignaggi around that sort of time when I fought Alvarez. If I'd have got a chance against one of them for the world welterweight title, do I think I could have become a world champion, which was always my goal? The answer is yes. But do I regret it? Does it keep me up at night? No, it's just the way it panned out.
You did say after Branco, I always knew I was capable of this, and you said that you boxed better depending on the opponent. So obviously you said there a couple of fights later you went off to Anaheim to fight some chap called Canelo. He lost on points over 12, but that's aged terrifically well, hasn't it? You think of all the guys he stopped subsequently, even up at light heavyweight, to say that you've gone the distance with him. And the fact that he outweighed you, he didn't make the weight, and then there was agreements about how much weight he could come in at. I think you came in at 157 for the fight. He came in at 165 eventually. At the time, you said that he was just too big and you couldn't put a dent in him. Did you think he'd go on to achieve what he has? And obviously they were saying that he was going to, but it's one thing saying it and hearing the hype. It's another thing when you've been in there and fought him.
I knew straight away, Trish, literally within being in the ring for about a minute, that he was a special fighter. Physically so strong, freakishly strong, tremendous shot selection, great punch power, just such a good, or even then, and we're talking a lot of years ago, he's obviously developed. He's gone on to be an amazing fighter, the best pound-for-pound fighter out there. Did it shock me? No. I told everybody after the fight he was going to go on to do some great things. So, quite how big he's become and how good he's become. He's developed so well as a fighter. Yes, I'm trying to look for the right... Not surprised, no. He's gone on to become such a massive name, a huge name, the biggest name in the sport. But I knew straight away he was a special fighter.
He never hurt you?
He hurt me with a couple of body shots, but being brutally honest, no, he didn't. And again, I've always had that stubborn streak in me, whatever I do, whatever I put my mind to. And I was, again, people writing me off saying I was going to get blown away in a couple of rounds. Fuel again, just that want and that need to prove people wrong. It's just something I've always had in me.
Was that a good trip?
Again, a painful one. But again, just all these experiences over the years, they're just fun to look back. Some positive, some not. Again, the issues with the weight, and then we come to a deal, and just little tricks that was played. They played.
Yeah, was it 70 grand for him coming over the weight?
It was more than that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was more than that. But again, just a little. They certainly knew how to play the game.
Was that stressful? Did you find it stressful when he didn't make the weight and had to go away and come back, or are you just thinking, I just need to do what I need to do?
Again, I'm smiling here because I can remember it and I can picture it. He never made the weight, and Ricky was there. Gareth Williams, who was the solicitor at the time, Ricky as well. They was all there after the fight. He never made the weight, and some of my friends was there. Like, it was never an option not to fight, even though I could have walked away with quite a decent percentage in my purse. I'd trained hard for the fight. I'd seen him at the weigh-in. I fancied it. Again, I wanted to test myself. A lot of my friends and family had made the effort, had paid to go over. So straight away after the fight, I spoke to my dad, Ricky, Gareth. They said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to fight." Plain and simple. I said, "I want compensating, but I want to fight." So a few of my friends were there, and they said, it's like something out of an Only Fools and Horses. My dad's on his phone, speaking in French. "Matthew can fight Solomon and Bailly in France for the WBA title, blah, blah, blah." So in the end, I was compensating. I was compensated well, but I was never not going to fight. It wasn't my thing. It wasn't my style. Again, and I'd got to that stage where I knew what I wanted to do, and I wasn't a great listener then. And that's what, now I remember saying I'm going slightly off subject. I remember before every fight, I used to say to my trainers, "Whatever happens, don't stop the fight. Promise me you won't stop the fight no matter what happens. I'm telling you." And I used to make them. Now, if one of my boxers said that to me now, I'd say, "Hey, shut up. I make the decisions. That's what I'm here to do." But it was a tough night. Was it a great experience? On the whole, yes, it was. And again, that's the night that people want to talk about a hell of a lot of my career. And again, I look back, very proud. Really, I'm very proud how I performed that night.
Well, Canelo said afterwards, people criticised Matthew, but he was a tough guy. It was a tough fight, and I respect him. It's not bad, is it?
Not bad. And again, trying to look back and learn all the time. I was in a really good position at the time. Was it the right fight to take? Again, certain people did tell me, go down different options. There were certainly easy options there for a world welterweight title, which I believe I could have won. But I wanted to challenge myself, wanted to test myself against the best. I should have probably listened. Did it cut my career short a little bit? Possibly. So was it the right decision? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But again, you just learn. You're just learning all the time as you go along.
Was that your biggest purse?
Yeah, that was my biggest purse.
Were you were with Bob Shannon by now?
That's right, yeah.
So why the move from Lee to Bob?
Lee was doing a really good job training me. But Lee's always been interested in travelling and going here, going there, working with different fighters. Lee's always been keen to work abroad and stuff like that. I was in training for a fight. Trying to think which fight it was now, but anyway, I was in training for a fight, and Lee wanted to go and do some work with Guzman.
Yeah,
I think
Guzman.
Yes. Yeah. Now Lee was my trainer, and I told him I wasn't very happy. I said, "Well, you either training him or you training me." He went over there, decided to train Guzman, and at that stage, I made the move and went with Bob Shannon then.
What was your chemistry like with Bob?
Again, I got on great with Bob. Really did. I've learned so many, all the different trainers that I've worked with, whether they've trained me or just done bits and pieces for work I've worked with, they've all helped me. Bob was a good guy. He used to get fighters super fit and a great motivator. He knew the right things to say and when to say them. He worked a lot on my footwork, which really improved under Bob. So different trainers have brought different things to my game, and I'm very thankful to them all, and I've picked up bits from them all.
5 months after Canelo in California, you were fighting at the Tower Circus in Blackpool. It's another of those sort of paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
You came back with a win, but then fought Kell Brook and lost on points. How good was Kell? Because he was around his peak here.
He was, and the biggest regret of my boxing career was that night. And it's certainly not an excuse. I'd had a good build up to the fight. But I damaged my nose probably 10 days before, in my last spar, my nose had not bled for ages. I was sparring Tyrone Nurse and another guy, and my nose went, and it was really, really sore. But that was my last spar. I didn't spar again up until the fight, which is when I usually finish my sparring anyway. It felt great on fight night. I felt fit, I felt strong, I felt ready for it. But whether my nose was slightly weakened before that first bell or not, I don't know. He caught me in the first round. My nose went. And in all my years in the ring, that was the most pain I'd ever been in. It really was. Whenever I tried to push or press, I'd be walking onto stiff jabs, I'd be walking onto shots. And I remember from about rounds 3 or 4, I just wanted the fight to be over. I mean, there was never any quitting me. I was never going to quit. Some people say it, you'd have had to take me out there on a stretcher. I wasn't going to quit, I wasn't going to stop. And I made it through to the final 12. But back to your question, Kell Brook, the special one, and he was a special fighter. Again, I've always had confidence. Could I have beat Kell at my very best? No. He was a better fighter than me, simply. He was a special fighter. His timing was really good, very good punch power, hit very, very hard. And after sharing 12, I realised he was a better fighter. Could I have beaten him? No. Could I have quit myself better? Without a doubt, without a broken nose. But again, looking back, 12 rounds again, broken my nose in the very first round. Proud of myself for getting to the final bell again, which was sort of like my MO towards the end, wasn't it?
You say that. Your next fight, you blew away Michael Lomax, who was a very good fighter. Like you said, he won prize fighter. You stopped him in a round. I'm not sure if you scored a 1-round stoppage before that, but that sort of came out of nowhere. Where did that come from? It was a body shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think when you catch somebody right to the body, whether it's the first or last round, and Michael Lomax was a good fighter, ABA champion, so much more amateur experience than me. He'd won prize fighter, so he was a good test. But I'd been boxing at such a good level then. I think the fighters had shared the ring with, give me so much belief and confidence, and really improved me boxing. And even though he was a good fighter, I was levels above him.
Chris Van Heerden was your last fight in South Africa. How come South Africa? Boxing News said it was a dirty and bad-tempered fight.
It was.
How did you wind up down there?
Again, I sort of like was thinking. I had the fight at Bowlers. I knew the Van Heerden was coming. I was managing myself by that stage. So a guy had approached me. I'd done a little bit of research on the promoter. He was paying me good money to go and fight out there. We went over, did the press conference. We was really well looked after. But I remember on the night of the fight, from being so well looked after, I was staying in a plush hotel. I was in an area called Sandton, which in South Africa, it's right near Mandela Square. It was great, and I was really well looked after. Then on the night of the fight, it changed, where it was a case of, right, get to the venue. And I remember getting to the venue and walking through all these crowds. The hostility towards me was pretty strong. They've all got guns. They're putting on the guns in the lockers before they enter the arena. And I thought, fucking hell, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? But at that stage, it was too late. And again, it was another, quite a messy fight, quite a scrappy fight. Again, they did pull a stroke. The fight was always agreed to be in Cape Town, which is at sea level. Johannesburg is known for its, what's the word I'm looking
Altitude.
for? Altitude, yeah, sorry about that, Tris. Well known for its altitude. And I remember starting well in the fight. After 4 rounds, I'd opened a big cut above his eye. I was winning the fight, but I'd just run on empty very quickly. I was tired, and he run away again. It was a scrappy fight. He run away a clear winner. And even though the altitude did play a factor, again, like I touched on earlier in the interview, I was very disappointed after the fight, disappointed with my performance after the fight. I woke up very early. I got out of my room. I went walked around the show. I was sat there having a coffee, and I thought, why did I lose that? And again, I was honest with myself. He wanted to win more than me. I contemplated retirement, but I've never been the sort of person who makes hasty decisions. Even though then my initial reaction was I wanted to retire, I then went and saw a specialist when I got home who touched on the problems he had with the nerves in the corner of my eye, said I needed a small operation, 12 months out of the ring. Again, I think having my family at that stage, again, I'd had 2 small kids, had softened me a little bit, and a few things come together, and I think it was a few months out of that thought, I'm going to make the announcement, I'm going to decide to retire now.
So if you'd fought on, you were in danger of detaching a retina or something like that?
Yeah, and again, I was managing myself at the time, and it was a difficult thing to do because my phone wouldn't stop ringing for fights, and I'm talking about good fights as well, well-paid fights. But I knew then the hunger had slightly gone, and again, sort of like saying how well I've coped with retirement, and all things come together. I sat on it, I thought about it. There was no doubt in my mind it was the right time to stop boxing, and I made the announcement. It was a sad day, but then again, I was sort of like on a little bit, and I'd always had one eye on wanting to get into training and coaching. It's something that always interests me. That's why any trainer that I've worked with, I'm always plugging them for information, and I always watch what they do, because I did have one eye on becoming a trainer, and maybe I'd like my career to go on a little bit longer than it did. But being a trainer was something that had always interested me. Even when I was still boxing, I had one eye on it myself already then.
The good eye, not the bad.
The good eye, yeah.
I do want to ask about this, right? So it's great to see all the pictures that go up on social media now that Ricky posts generally of you guys all together, all the Hattons back together, but there was a period of time where things were fraught and strained with the family. How bad was that period for you? And I mean, we can encompass the Sinchenko fight and Ricky's woes after that. It was highly publicised, it was in the newspapers and all the rest of it. What was that like for you? It
was terrible. Now that things have been put right, and it's like we've never been away from each other then, but during them years it was very difficult because it was well documented how close we was as a family, and like we touched on before, some people know the right things to say, know the right things to do in front of the cameras, but that's the way we were. We were so close, and it was so sad. They fell out, and it was a difficult time for me, you know. Sometimes you get brought into things yourself, even though it was nothing, absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with me. You can't help but get sucked in, and if the people
accused of taking sides and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and that was always, you know, about taking sides, and it was going on for a lot, you know, a lot of toing and throwing, and I made, again, that was probably going on for a couple of years. Ricky still had his issues with my mum and dad. And one day, because me and Ricky was always so close, we had the same friends, and it was getting awkward for people. I'd go in the pub, at the local pub, and he'd be sat there, and I'd feel as if I'd sit away and stuff like that. And I thought, one day, I was driving. He was living down the road, and I thought, you know what? What's the problem here? Why are we falling out? It's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with him. And I just knocked on his front door. Probably not spoke properly for a couple of years, and I just knocked on his front door. He let me in, and I just said, Rick, I said, why have we fell out? Your issues with your mum and dad has got nothing to do with me and you. You know, we've always been close, you know, think the world of you, and he said the same thing to me. And he said, well, we can be friends, but we just can't speak about my mum and dad. And I said, well, that's fine. And we sort of like got our relationship back together then, and subsequently he made up with my mum and dad, and we're talking a lot of years later. Time wasted, but I'm so glad that things are back as they were now, because I know it affected Ricky badly, it affected my mum and dad. It was a hard time for me. I'm just thankful now that things are getting better.
When Ricky was public talking about suicide and that kind of stuff, what was that like as a brother?
Oh, it's so sad. Tragic, just so glad he didn't do it now, and again he had his issues with drink and drugs, depression, tough times, tough to, like I say, it was around that time where he wasn't getting on great, and you're not hearing it from the ocean, you're reading it in newspapers, so no, really bad times, mate, really bad.
Going on a slightly different tangent, What has been the high part of your career? Was it the European title win, the Branco fight?
Without a shadow, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Again, a lot of belts around these days. You know, the full European title against a quality fighter, and again, after people writing me off, it was a sweet night. It really was.
And what was the lowest part of the boxing journey?
Lowest part of the boxing journey. Yeah, good question, really. I mean, I always took defeat very bad, even from a kid. My mum, when we used to go on holidays, me and Rick would always be competing. Invariably, he was a lot older than me, and a lot of times I'd get second prize. And whether it was tennis, table tennis, I've always been a terrible. It got that bad, people wouldn't play with me because I took defeat that bad, and I still hate losing now. So. All of my losses I took bad. So I think the Craig Watson defeat, and that is why I made drastic actions and made the decision.
Because it was legit.
It was a legit defeat, and Craig was a good fighter. Do I think he was a better fighter than me? No, I don't. But he certainly won that fight, and in on a big occasion, in front of a big crowd. Again, these things. You cannot, like say, it was a bad night, but again, I used it as a fuel to propel and push myself forward, and certainly motivate. I remember how that defeat tasted, and I didn't want to taste it again.
But by the way, how are you and Billy these days?
Yeah, I don't really speak with Billy. Kerry's involved with me now. He's doing the cuts for Campbell and a few of the other boxers that I train. And he always says, "Oh, Billy's been asking about you," and I always say, "Give Billy my best wishes." I think that's part of, like say, Ricky's a lot better now. He's got on with mum and dad, and I know Ricky and Billy was always very close. They had a great relationship, a great partner, and there was a great training team for each other. I never really had that relationship with Billy. I never fell out with Billy. I've got a lot of respect for Billy. He was a great trainer. He did a great job for my brother. He certainly helped me in my career. So I can't wait till next time I see Billy, because Billy's a real character. Billy's another of these guys you can listen to all day. A funny man without even knowing it.
Have you introduced, or have you has Billy spent any time with Campbell yet?
He hasn't, no, but the opportunity is definitely there for him to do so. I'm not one of these trainers. Some trainers can get possessive about the box and stuff like that. I encourage Campbell to do bits. He does work with his dad. If Billy wants to come down to the gym and cast his eye over Campbell, again, I have different people coming into my gyms, and I always ask them for feedback. If I know it's someone who's experienced and knows the sport really well. Again, yourself, Patricia, who's been around the sport, if you ever come down to the gym and watch Campbell, I'd ask you what you thought, because I do believe a few eyes are better than one set. You know what I mean? So, no, that'd be something I'd like to see.
How good is Campbell, or how good can he be?
Campbell's got the ability to be a really good fighter. I've been working with Campbell now probably for the last 4 years, and how it all started. Campbell was fighting as an amateur, and he was getting pretty mixed results, to be fair. Again, he was never pushed into the boxing. He was never pushed by me, by Ricky, and we sort of took a back seat originally. But then we live literally within a stone's throw of each other, and I was going to his fights, and he was winning some, losing some, but I could see him around. I could see the work he was putting in, and he wanted it so bad. And, you know, I was there and I was watching him, and I thought, you know what, I need to step in here and sort of like give him my help. So I spoke to his dad first. I said, I'm going to offer to help Campbell. I said, because he's not coming on as quickly as he should be. I think he's shown now he wants the sport, he wants to do it, and we're in good position to help him. So then Rick said, yeah, I'm going to start doing more work with him as well. And that's how I originally started working with Campbell. Did I envisage him turning? No, my instincts at the time, because he was literally winning one, losing one. He had a 50-50 record, losing to people he shouldn't have been losing to. But I knew I could help him, and that's all I wanted to do. I thought he deserves better than this. And I decided that then I said, Campbell, you can have as much or as little time of mine as you want. Anytime you want to come to the gym, let me know. And that's how it started. I started working with him more and more and more.
How important is it that you maintain control over how quickly he's moved?
Very important, because I've been in the game a lot of years, and me and Ricky again, very experienced, great boxing brain, and he knows also, who's managing Campbell, how quickly or slowly he should be brought along. And we're very fortunate. Matchroom know it's going to be a process. They're in no rush with him. Eddie, when we've spoken to him in the past, know it's going to be a process. But I think the process will be worth it, because he's got the ability, he's got the talent, he's got the physical attributes as well. He's very strong, Campbell, very tough. And the one thing that I really like about Campbell, I mean, a lot of people talk about Conor Ben also and put them in a similar bracket, and I can see why.
Sure.
Conor doesn't need to box, Campbell doesn't need to box, but different things motivate different people. And Campbell has got that hunger for success, and worked with and refined. I've always said it about Campbell, even in some of his amateur fights when he was losing, I said he's a rough diamond, Campbell. And I think that Campbell has got the ability to have a really good, successful career. I really do believe that.
Do you have any timelines on him at all, like, British title level in 4 years, for instance, or 20 fights or whatever? Do you have anything in mind?
I think you always have in mind a way you envisage it panning out, or the way you'd like it to pan out. But I think in boxing, and you're fortunate enough, you can go stage by stage. We've got to see how he goes on against the opposition he faces, sure. and then we'll sort of like move things accordingly. So even though I think you have a rough idea of how you'd like things to go, I think you can, in boxing you can't have a set plan.
Yeah, unless you've got that Olympic amateur pedigree.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%, yeah.
Sort of go, but more fight by fight.
Yeah, which he doesn't have, of course, and obviously due to the COVID, Campbell would still be an amateur now if it wasn't from the COVID. But again, you've got to do the best thing with the situation you put in and the cards you dealt, and without a doubt, it was the right thing to do.
I've got a question here from one of the subscribers, Ben Law, who says, do you think the attention Matchroom have placed on Campbell on top of the automatic pressure of being a Hatton is helpful for his development, given that he's such a relative novice? Which I think is an interesting question, because basically it's talking about that spotlight, and which is a given, which is a blessing and a curse in many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, as I found out in my own career, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Yeah, with it does come pressure. But my own opinion, and again, I want Campbell to aim for the stars. If I didn't think he could go on, and we're talking far down the line, if I didn't think Campbell could go on and win significant titles and get to the very top in boxing, I'd tell him to do something else. Because he's a smart lad, he's a clever lad, and boxing's a very hard, tough, brutal sport, especially at a good level in boxing. So if I didn't think he could do it, I'd tell him to do something else. But he is who he is. It is in my opinion, it's something he's just got to learn to deal with. And he will. He will.
Do you get more nervous for his fights, given that A, he's a relative, and B, he's inexperienced?
Yeah, I suppose so. Again, it's one of them. I remember from my professional debut, again, it was a new experience for me. I've been coaching several years now, and I get close to all the fighters I train. I wouldn't train anyone I'm not close to or don't get on, because of the amount of time and effort that you've got to put into these kids. I'm a busy man myself. I've got my own kids. I've got my own family. So I'm close to all the fighters I train. But when he was making his professional debut, it wasn't quite an emotional, because I was seeing all the things that come with it, and it made me very proud, really. So I went for a coffee in the afternoon, and I was getting a bit emotional and getting involved, and I thought, you know what, I've just got to try and step aside from it a little bit now, get my coach's head on, get my professional head on, and that's what I did, and it works out great at the minute, it really does.
You mentioned you've got your own kids. One of them is Jack, who seems to be doing a lot of pad work with Ricky. It's like a son swap. So you seem to be doing Campbell, and he seems to have Jack. But what are your aspirations for Jack? Just let him find his way and see if it's something he wants to do. And would you actively encourage him to do it?
You know what, Tris? It's one of them where I've sort of changed my stance on this, really, because people always used to ask me about Campbell boxing and Jack boxing, And I would always say, no, I don't want them to box, because I know what a hard, tough, brutal sport boxing is. But then I look back, and again, there's been fights and times where you're on the other side of the ropes now. Some fighters you're training, some fighters you're managing. You've got that responsibility as a manager. You're making fights. As a trainer, you train them for the fights. And I think I've got a little bit soft as I've got older. I've been sometimes on the other side of the ropes, and when lads have lost fights, it upsets me. It really does, and get very down about it. And again, it's a tough sport, but I can only talk about my own experience on boxing. I know some fighters come away from the sport and they've got a lot of negative things to say about the sport. You know, it's taken this, it's taken... Boxing's only ever given to me. But
you've also felt I don't know if being a victim is the right word, but you've also been a victim of politics, and it's that business grind of the stuff behind closed doors that wipes out a lot of people's love and enthusiasm, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not what you see in the day and the grind in the gym and all the rest of it. That's where you fall in love with it, and it's the shenanigans behind closed doors that alienates people. Yeah,
but 100%. And like I say, boxing's been very good to me. So from going where I didn't want Campbell or Jack for that, I mean, it's very early days, just boxing and enjoying it at the minute. But if he wanted to do it, boxing's been good to me. I would get behind him, I would support him. And again, it's only been good to me, boxing. So why can't it be for them guys? And they are who they are. Again, with Conor Ben, Campbell Hatton, they are who they are. They can't help that. It's just in them that they've got something to do. Campbell wants for nothing. Campbell doesn't need anything. But he wants to do it. And he's 20 years of age now. So if he wants to do it and it's in my powers to help him, I will do, and I'll do everything for him to get as far as he can get.
Last couple, because I know you've got to get to the gym.
No
Stuart
problem.
Ellis asks, did you ever feel overshadowed in your own career by your brother? Do you feel that sometimes you got the rougher deal despite your obvious talents?
Yeah, I mean, it's
some and some, wasn't it?
You're in sport. It's a competition. You're always going to be compared. And was I as good a fighter than Ricky? No, I wasn't. He's achieved far more than what I've achieved in my career. But at the end of the day, I put everything into the sport. I give a hell of a lot to the sport. And even though I do think it was within me to win a world title, it just never panned out. So I'd look back and, I didn't achieve what Ricky did achieve in the sport. And people will always compare, and that's rightly so. It's sport, it's competitive. But am I happy with what I have achieved in the sport? Yeah, very happy, very proud. And I didn't achieve what Ricky did, but what I achieved is certainly good enough for me.
Yeah, two brothers from the same family that both went above and beyond, beyond domestic level.
Absolutely. I was the best fighter in Europe. I was highly ranked. Could have been a world champion at the time. I do believe so. But if you'd have said to me, again, I'm contradicting myself, I always wanted to be a world champion. But looking at it now, for the ability that I had, European champion's good enough for me. Satisfied, yeah.
And then the other thing, just to finish on, there was this story doing the rounds, and I think I saw this in an interview with you years ago. You kicked a tramp's dog, and the tramp jumped up and laid you out. Do you remember hearing this?
Mate.
Just something, and then wasn't there someone else who, and this might have been a forum thread where someone piled in and said, yeah, I heard that as well.
Well, mate, I can tell you, hand on heart, on my life, that is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Nice story, though.
What is the worst thing you've read about yourself, apart from that? I mean, have you read bad stuff? Or I suppose you have, everyone has in the social media age, but is there anything that stands out?
Not really, no. And like I touched on,
Did you take it evenly then? Did you take the criticism evenly, or did some of it really get you steamed up?
No, I've always been that way, Tris, and I still am. It doesn't overly concern me what people think, as long as my family and the people that I'm close to know who I am and know the man I am. Again, when I was boxing, social media, I did used to laugh at a lot of it. I've got to be honest, and I'm not a person who takes things to heart too much. And again, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? But now I've retired. It must be just the British mentality. The same people that used to slate me, they're very complimentary to me now. So why that is, I don't know, but nothing in particular says that, but that's a bell to that. And it's definitely not true, mate, I can assure you that.
Especially now you're a dog lover, you're a converted dog lover.
I am, yeah. I mean, I probably speak, at the end of the day, I was bullied into it by my partner and 2 kids about getting dog. They was on at me for years. You know, we'll do this, we'll do. I do most of the day-to-day stuff with it now, but yeah, I am a converted dog lover now. Since we've had him just over a year now. The thing I like about dogs, there's no bullshit, mate. What you put into them, you get back. They're so loving, and what you put into them, they get back.
Well, it was Mickey Duff who's got that great line from boxing, if you want loyalty, buy a dog.
100%, mate. And again, if you want loyalty, I'm not going to say you're never going to get in boxing, but very rare. But again, like I say, but just chatting with you, mate, brings a smile to my face. Been very fortunate, been professional boxing a lot of years, rough and smooth, but on the whole, it's been great, and long may it continue.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tris. Been great, mate.